your question was why passenger pigeons. We've really gotten a little off of that, but culturally they are the icon that started modern conservation. They're a big piece of American history. So for a lot of reasons, there's philosophical and moral reasons to be like, yeah, we should bring this species back. We should restore it.
So,
but if we move on to the science of why the passenger pigeon, one is there are 1,500 passenger pigeon specimens in existence to get DNA from. I mean, so that's 1,000 more than any other recently extinct bird or mammal. So we have a ability to get DNA that was just early on in our work was like, okay, well, we can make a lot of genomes if we need to. And pigeons in general, in domestic pigeons and whatnot, we have a lot of husbandry knowledge with these species that goes back, and animal care knowledge that goes back centuries. Because it was a economically hunted species, harvested species, the historic records of it actually give us a really good picture of what it was like in the environment. People actually took notes. People that bred it in captivity took notes about how they were breeding and whatnot. So we have a big chunk of knowledge to be able to design a program that should work. But in the last few years, we've been evaluating our hypotheses about how important this species is in the environment. And it turns out that our original hypotheses are really much more supported by the work, by the data, that this species was what we call an ecosystem engineer, meaning that it shaped the environment through its physical activities in the forest. These flocks of billions were coming in, overcrowding branches at a roosting site to the point where they were branches were crashing off of trees under their weight. Entire trees were breaking down from their weight. And in the 5 or 6 weeks they would spend in one spot, they would roost in one spot, fly out during the day and eat, come back at night, and they would just build up guano on the forest floor, inches to feet thick. And all that devastation sounds bad, but for anybody that knows Forestry 101, disturbances are vital to forest ecosystems. That guano built up on the forest floor snuffs out all of the plants, basically resets the competition for new life to come back. So in an environment that was once closed canopy with not a lot of sunlight getting through, with just shade-loving plants dominating, you now have an environment where the floorboard has been reset. There's sunlight coming through from all the gaps in the trees, and you get a completely new kind of meadow, open forest habitat springing up in its place, which a whole host of other species get to take advantage of. And then that canopy slowly starts to regenerate and close in, and you get back to the state it used to be. And by the time you get there, the pigeons come back, start it all over again.
Have we already lost all of the dependent species, or all of the species that were dependent on this process, or can something still be saved?
We have not, and that's where we're in a good situation right now. I mean, it's not good, but we're still in a good place to do this. Is that over the last 100 years? So after the passenger pigeon went extinct, there was actually a spike in wildfires up to the 1930s, and those fires really kept that disturbance cycle going. But there was also less and less forest, so that was a problem. So by the 1920s, forests hit their lowest point. And since then, with agriculture shifting to the Midwest and the Great Plains, with strip mines and things like that getting completely tapped out, abandoned farms and mines and whatnot have reforested. And there's actually as much forest in the eastern U.S. now as there was in the 1850s.
But not as diverse? I mean, the chestnut nuts are missing,
Precisely. For example. We're missing the chestnut, but also the phenomenon people have seen as the forest has come back is because since the 1930s, we've got a huge population in the eastern United States. No one wants wildfires going through and possibly burning down their suburb. So there's been huge, huge amounts of work to suppress fire. And without fire and without pigeons, there's been no reliable source of disturbance to reset those cycles. And so this forest has been regrowing back, but it's all closed canopy. It's shifting to just a few species of trees that dominate in those areas. We are actually living in a state of forests where we've got more forests, but we do have less diversity. The diversity that we had is still here. It's just clinging on in little isolated pockets. And in the 1940s and 50s and 60s, forest managers realized that they needed to start doing that type of disturbance. So actually human beings now go out on public lands and whatnot and start those disturbance cycles. They go out and they cut branches down, thin trees. They'll even burn the understory. They'll do a whole bunch of things to kick this back up. But the problem we face is that only 20% of the forests of the eastern United States are public lands. The rest are private. And so, as I said, we've got very small pockets where there's been enough management activity and conservation work to keep all these species around. But if you look into the literature, you'll see time and time again for decades now, people saying that, you know what, if we don't get more disturbances back into our forests, we're going to lose the species that are here. And they might not go extinct everywhere in the world, but they will be gone from the eastern U.S. And our data now shows, well, the pigeon, more than fires, was a constant source, reliable. You never know when a fire is really going to happen. The First Nations people were actually the most responsible managers of land for thousands of years that were setting fires and using it as a tool to manage land the way they wanted. But even before human beings ever got to to North America, pigeons were a constant, perpetual source of disturbances, nomadically moving and creating this mosaic. So looking forward to the future, it's like, okay, we haven't lost everything yet. We've seen from the types of activities humans do that we can get this cycle going. We can manage this stuff. But why not, rather than spending hundreds of thousands to millions of dollars every year in perpetuity to try and keep 10% of what we've got, left around, why not spend, $20-30 million in a few decades, create these pigeons, get them back into the environment, and then they take over and they do the job.
Escaped Sapiens.